or I get excited and start saying hi to everybody and then completely forget to record. How's everybody's day going?
All right. It's good. It's a long day. It's a Monday.
Yeah, I was about to say it is a Monday.
Monday.
I see chat coming. Hey everybody. Hey Brian. Hey, there's Bradley. I have a face to a name now.
Is this your first time meeting a lot of these people, Allie?
Well, meeting is a relative term in my world. I can talk to one of the coolest things about these calls for me is that I can talk to people forever on emails or the Facebook group or whatever, and I don't always have in many cases don't have a face to a name. So all of a sudden somebody shows up in front of me and I'm like, hey, you are a real person. That's cool. All right, we're gonna let people. Hey, Chet, good evening to you as well. And thank you for reminding me to have the chat box open. So we're going to let people continue to trickle in. We're going to have a lot of fun tonight. We're going to try and keep it brief. We want to give you guys some basic information about the market, about the properties, and then we want to get more quickly into like question and answers because I know you guys are going to have questions. So we are also this is not a formal, like structured webinar. I want everybody to be included. I want you guys to feel comfortable asking questions. We have an amazing Detroit resource right in front of you. His name is Al. And he will be able to answer anything you have.
Nice to meet everybody.
All right. Let's see. How do I want to structure this? So the other thing we'll do, and you overachievers who are here on time are going to hear me probably repeat a couple of things as more people trickle in. If at any point along the lines you have a question, there's a chance that we may answer it before you get a chance to ask it, but you're also welcome to type anything you want into the chat box. Because what I'm going to do is when we get to the question and answers, so nobody feels pressured that you have to get on camera to ask a question, although you're more than welcome to, is I will go through the chat box and see everybody's questions, and I'll make sure that we hit all of those. I'll also be sending out a recording. So if you guys end up having to leave early, if anything happens, don't worry, I'll send you out the replay. So no worries there. And let's see, how are we doing on time? We'll give it another, say, 2 to 3 minutes to let people keep getting on here. And if you guys who are on here have any burning Detroit questions, even before we've started talking, because I know this is going to be a cool conversation, because I know Detroit, of all cities, has some interesting perceptions that people have about it. Like if you have a burning question now, throw it in the chat box and we'll hit right into that stuff. Great question, Brian. We'll go ahead and hit this while people are getting on. Do you have to be an accredited investor to invest with turnkey properties? Nope, absolutely not. So when you buy a turnkey, you're just buying a house like you would any other house. So really it just comes down to either mortgage qualifications or your financial abilities. But let's see, I'm gonna get everyone muted.
Why don't you go down to Rocco's cage and we'll get.
Okay, how do I?
As the host, you can actually mute everybody and just.
That's what I was wondering. Where is that?
You can choose who to mute or unmute as well.
That sounds like a really good theory, except I don't see that option anywhere. So every time I feel like I do just few enough Zooms where every time I get on a new one, all the settings have changed. So we're going to play that by ear. Oh, I just found it. Yes. Okay. So we'll give it maybe just another minute or so, and then we'll get going while people jump on. So accredited investor, no, you're just buying a house. You are more than able to do that. The accredited investor happens a lot with things like syndications, buying into real estate funds. That's where the government tries to hop in and protect you from getting screwed, to put it nicely. But when you buy a house, it's between you and the house. You're not buying into somebody else. And because I feel like I want to shout this from the rooftop, anytime you're going to buy a house, which includes turnkeys and especially involves turnkeys, I want everyone doing their own due diligence, because it is between you and that house. You want to do the due diligence on that property to make sure that you know what you're buying. So that's where that kind of protection, why the accredited investor thing exists and all that kind of fun stuff. So I was hoping I was going to see this person hop on, and he may get really mad at me. Graham, are you available to say hi? We have a special guest on the call.
I am in listen-only mode. I am in attendee-only mode.
Fair enough.
So most of you, if you've been around for 5 seconds around Turnkey World, you may have heard Graham's name. He's one of the biggest turnkey lenders, I would argue. He's one of the biggest turnkey lenders that a lot of people use. And a lot of people have amazing luck with him. I don't know, Graham, I'd say most of your business, a huge chunk of your business is turnkey financing. Graham is actually how I met Al. So I'm exceptionally excited to have Graham here. I'm trying to convince Graham to join us on the Detroit Investors Tour trip, but he has not given me an answer yet. But apparently he's going to be in listen only mode. But towards the end, if Graham is still around, and if you guys have any financing questions right now, I don't know, maybe we could twist his arm to answer one or two.
Fair enough.
Oh, you can always twist my my arm.
Okay, easy, great. I'm going to turn my fan up higher. It is finally actually warm and dry in LA, and I did not have my fan setting. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so these are Graham questions. So I'm going to come back to the questions for Graham. So let's get started. I want to introduce Al. And you may notice quickly that we are not giving a lot of information about who Al's company is or who he is. I don't know how many people are familiar with how I work. One of the things that I promise when I work with turnkey providers is I act a lot like a gatekeeper. So after this call, I'm going to be putting this recording out to the public. And because these videos can hit a lot of people, what I try to do is protect people like Al from getting absolutely bombarded by people who are going to take up a lot of their time. And so, so don't worry, we're not trying to hide who Al is or who his company is. If you are interested, if you think that this may be a possibility for you, you can email me. I will actually, most of you probably have my email address, but let's put it in the box. Anyways, you can email me anytime. I am more than happy to give you all of the providers' information. We just this is going to be a public recording. So we just kind of want to, like I said, not let Al's phone ring off of the hook. So with that said, we are here to talk about Detroit. This is going to be a very casual call. I said it earlier when some people were already on, our intention is to give you some information about Detroit as a market, investing in Detroit, what does all this look like? And then we're going to show you a couple properties just so you have an idea of numbers. And then we're going to pretty quickly shift into question and answers, because I want to make sure we're here for you guys. Whatever you guys want to know, that's what we want to answer. So we want to make sure we have plenty of time for you guys to have a conversation. Maybe we can hit up Graham for some lending questions, whatever you guys want to do. So with that said, so Al's going to he's got some slides. So I'm going to let him kind of take the reins and talk a little bit about Detroit. I know a lot of people have questions about Detroit. When I started investing, all I heard were horror stories about Detroit. And if you guys have been following me for very long, you know that I went to Detroit. Was that October, November, a few months ago? And I went there mostly expecting to have my perceptions about Detroit confirmed. And I did not. I was absolutely floored at what I saw in Detroit. And so I want to share that with you guys. I'm going to let Al kind of take over from here, talk about the city, talk about the market. Like I said, keep your questions coming and we'll get all those answered. And yeah, Al, you ready?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'll get that going now. Give me a second and we will get started. All right, guys. Hopefully everybody can see my screen. Everybody can hear me loud and clear. My name is Al. I'm born and raised here in Detroit. So this is my backyard. This is my playground. I had the great privilege to meet Allie through Graham, and Allie and I kind of just hit it off, and she had the chance, like she said, to come out to Detroit and see this firsthand. So we are hoping to do the same thing with you guys when you guys have the chance to come out here. But this is going to be a quick little intro call, Zoom call, if you will. Probably spend maybe 30 minutes just going over some slides. And I know everybody wants to get into some meat and potatoes, which are the properties and property management, and, you know, give a few minutes maybe for Graham to also answer some questions. So that's really what today's for, just to give some intro, what's going on in Detroit. For some of you guys, Detroit could be like this big war zone or horror town to you guys because you're just not familiar what's happening in Detroit, especially over the course of the last 5 to 10 years. And that's what today's time's for. So we'll go ahead and get started. So everybody can see my screen. Allie, you can see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, quick little disclaimer. The strategies mentioned in this presentation may not be appropriate for everyone. Other options are not mentioned may be more suitable for your specific circumstances. So this is just a quick little disclaimer letting you guys know this is strictly for your guys' knowledge. We are not consultants, tax advisors, personal accountants, or attorneys to give anything or discuss any specific situation. Past performance is no guarantee on future results. Real estate purchases are subject to investment risk, including the possibility of lost amounts invested. While every effort is made to maintain accurate and current information, the possibilities of errors and or updates always exist. So a little bit about me and the company. We were formed back in the early 2000s, back in Detroit. Our primary focus was more new construction homes. When the market kind of shifted and the dynamics shifted, we actually became accidental landlords. We started buying up some properties, and some of these properties had tenants in them. The concept of even turnkey at that time actually wasn't even around. So we just literally were still focusing on new construction properties, but while still building a portfolio. And then, like I said, accidental landlords happened, the downshift of the economy happened. We started getting tenants out that couldn't pay back in the day. And then we were like, okay, let's start putting new tenants in. And as we started growing and our database started to grow, that's when we became a turnkey provider back in 2000 or like 2010, 2011 is when we really started hitting it off. So about a decade ago. I've been with the company for about a decade as well. And since then I've done, over 100 million in real estate transactions. That's a little bit about us real quick. And I want to just take a minute or two, actually about 2 minutes. And I want to talk about Detroit for a second. I put this video, I found this video online. This is Dan Gilbert being interviewed by Yahoo News. And I want to share this video with you guys. So if you guys will, just turn up your speakers a little bit. And I want you guys to take this introductory video about Detroit, and we're going to spill it into what I'm going to show you guys as well.
Motor City has officially gone bust. Back to Detroit now, the biggest U.S. municipal bankruptcy in history. As you may know, the Detroit public school system is a shambles. Owing more than $18 billion in debt, Motor City officially filed for bankruptcy just moments ago.
It was a city in ruins. Detroit, once booming with a population of 1.8 million people, shrunk to a town of just 700,000. An auto industry that once sustained the city, needing a government bailout of $25 billion. Neighborhoods deserted and a downtown turned into a modern-day ghost town. That was the old Detroit, and this is the new. Today, business is on the rebound, and prominent Detroit-based investors like Dan Gilbert, CEO of Quicken Loans, which has more than 100 companies under its umbrella, are stepping up.
When I think of Detroit, I think of GM. I don't think of this Silicon Valley like office space that you have.
Yeah, there really is a technology center here that's growing every day. I mean, 110 new technology companies probably in the last 3 years alone. It's nice to know that at least there's some intrigue. People like you are showing up.
That intrigue has business flocking to a once deserted downtown Detroit. 4 years ago, when Gilbert moved his company's headquarters to the abandoned city, he brought 1,300 employees into buildings that were only 20% full. Fast forward to today, downtown office buildings are 95% occupied, and construction in the now chic downtown can't keep up with demand. High-rises are transforming left and right, as was once a crime-ridden ghost town is turning into a modern-day metropolitan gem. Billions of dollars have been invested, and Wall Street is paying attention to the revival, including some of its biggest titans.
And you've had a lot of interest from people like Warren Buffett.
Yeah, they're coming in sort of daily. Actually, one of us going to be here next week again. We just put Madonna through the other day, and we're taking a lot of people through, well-known people and not well-known people. Until you're here and can feel it and see it, you're not going to understand how exciting the opportunity is.
All right. Thanks for taking that 2 minutes to listen to that video. So I like to start off with that video anytime I give a presentation because it's just a nice, warm welcoming to those of you that don't know about Detroit. Like I said, many of you may look at Detroit being a ghost town or war zone until you actually come out here and see it. Like Dan Gilbert was saying, it's a nice way of getting rid of that persona of Detroit. Everybody's afraid of Detroit. I remember doing a tour. I told you this story, Allie. I was doing a tour a couple of years ago. This beautiful couple flew in from, I think it was California. And I remember like every hour or two, they'd get this call from, I don't know who it was, if it was their mother or I forgot who it was exactly. And they were getting a wellness check. And I'm like, what's going on here? And they're like, oh, they're just checking up on us. That was the first call. And like an hour later, they get another call. Another hour later, they got another call. And I'm like,
it's kind of like they were on a date with Detroit and they had the message, like when you need your friend to call to get you out of it, they had someone calling to see if they needed no help.
I found it to be so funny. They're getting these wellness checks because they're in Detroit. They don't know what to expect. So I always share that story. I think it's awesome. But jumping right in, why do we love Detroit? Why do investors flock to Detroit as of recent? First of all, the low taxes. Not like many other real estate cities that people are flocking to. Detroit actually offers these great tax incentives and benefits to not only me and you, but also to the businesses. There's many grants and loans that are going out right now to assist startup businesses and affordability. That's one of my favorite reasons. In Metro Detroit, right now, it ranks as the #1 city to live in with a household income of $60,000 and under. Like I said, affordability. Now, why can't you and I take advantage of something like that, which we can? Graham probably will touch on this a little bit later, but we've done many, many, many deals together with prices of properties below 150,000. And it's the growing rental market here is just continuing to expand, which I'm going to touch about a little bit later. One of Allie's favorite facts is in the downtown Detroit area, where I'm going to show us in a couple more slides, the average rental rate was approximately about $900 to $950, maybe 9 years ago now. In today's market, it's jumped up to $3,000 a month. Like I said, we'll talk about that in a few more slides. Where's Detroit located? Here's a little bit about Michigan and Detroit itself. It's the 10th most populous state in America. There's over 700,000 people that are living right now in just the Detroit city itself. But if we're talking about the metropolitan area, it has over 3 million people right now living in Detroit. Detroit is 140 square miles large approximately, and you can fit Boston, Manhattan, and San Francisco into Detroit at the same time. That's how big it is. People don't realize that. where is the improvements going? You guys heard Dan Gilbert talk a little bit about, knocking down buildings, and there's new sky rises coming up. That picture right there is the 10,000th property that was getting knocked down, that was either vacant or dilapidated. And these are now these, I've had groups of investors coming in and buying blocks of properties. Of course, this was back maybe 7, 8 years ago when they were doing this, maybe 10 years ago. They were buying blocks of properties and they were doing this incredible transformation. And I remember even doing these tours that I offer you guys 7, 8 years ago, and seeing cranes and all this crazy construction going on every week and everywhere. And every week I would do these new tours, and I would tell the client that's with me for that week, and I'd say, man, I don't recall seeing this a week ago, or I don't recall seeing that a week ago. I found that to be so cool and amazing to actually live through the revitalization of Detroit that's still ongoing today. On this right side, you see a picture. There's $185 million that was invested into Detroit with new streetlights in neighborhoods that have gone up. And of that 185 million, JP Morgan Chase invested 100 million of it. For me, lighting is huge. You can see these light poles. I believe in it because it deters a lot of violence. And I think it's a very warm and welcoming way when you start getting into the city of downtown. Continuation of the infrastructure, transportation. This is something where Detroit was lacking. We only had one bus system for the whole city. Now we have trolley systems. The Q line was something that was built a few years back, where it takes you actually from one end of downtown Detroit all the way to the other end. That was something that was pretty huge, because you people from California, yes, you're very frequent in riding these and seeing these. Well, to us, it was like, oh my God, this is the next best thing since sliced bread. So we fell in love with it, and many people are now paying this monthly pass to use the Q line. And a lot of people are mostly millennials that are actually living in the downtown area that are also working in the downtown area. We have this new bus system called FAST, F-A-S-T, and it stands for Frequent, Affordable, Safe Transit. And that's also a new transportation system that has probably been a few years with that as well. And that takes you from city to city. So it starts you off in Detroit, but it then branches off to like Ann Arbor or Farmington or Bloomfield. Troy is one that I actually see that bus riding in. Troy's an A-class area that has these awesome malls. And I found that to be pretty cool, because I started seeing more and more of these buses. We've had $430 million allocated to improving the police and fire stations and the services within the city of Detroit. So we've had a lot more new hirees, a lot more personnel helping all in Detroit. So Gordie Howe International Bridge, one of my favorite things that's up and coming in Detroit. This is a $2 to $5 billion project that's expected to create over 10,000 new jobs. Right now, they probably got half of this built, not half all the way out here, probably a quarter. They got this first branch already done, and they got about a quarter of the way going. One of my favorite facts of this bridge being built is it's being funded by Canada. As you can see, Gordie Howe. Who's Gordie Howe? He's one of the greatest hockey players to ever play. And he played for the Detroit Red Wings, but he was from Canada. So they named it the Gordie Howe International Bridge. Detroit has the largest point of entry between the United States and Canada, and it also has the busiest point of entry with all the importing and exporting through Detroit, that little small point of entry through the whole country of Canada. Continuation of the revitalization. This here is the gentleman that you guys saw in the video, Dan Gilbert. This here is Mike Ilitch. These are 3 photos of downtown Detroit. This is the building that Dan Gilbert is in. This is the CompuWare building. And this here is what it looks like in the summertime. In the summertime, they have this like sandbox that's in the middle of it. And they have a bar, they have running music happening. They have a new restaurant that's actually right in the middle. It's called Park. Actually, you can see it right there. There's the building right there. And in the wintertime, they transform this into a nice ice rink where you can take the family, the kids, and go ice skating over there. And they actually have this large theater that they put up this inflatable screen, and you can go hang out there, have some hot chocolate, watch a movie. It's really nice what they did in downtown Detroit. I find it to be so warm and welcoming myself. This here is the Little Caesars Arena. That's the new arena that was just recently built. This has the Detroit Red Wings and the Detroit Pistons share this arena here. And you can actually walk from one arena to another. Detroit is one of the only cities in the country to have all 4 major sports teams within walking distance of each other in the downtown Detroit area. So you can actually go from one game, get out of that game, walk across the street and watch another game. There's only a few months of the year that you can do that, and your team has to be in the playoff to do that. A little bit about the economy. As you
Hey, Al, can I interrupt you real fast?
Yeah, please.
Thinking of the revitalization of downtown Detroit. If you guys go on the trip, we'll go to downtown Detroit so you can see it for yourself. But when I was there in November, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, I've been to most of the major cities in the US, and honestly, downtown Detroit was, to me, what felt like the cleanest, safest feeling downtown I've ever been to, ever. I think I don't even know if I saw homeless people. I'm sure they're there. Every city has it. I can't even remember seeing homeless people, if that tells you anything. There's bike lanes. No part of it. Say what?
I said it's too cold. They want no part of it.
See, right? Whatever works. Now, SoCal, that's a different story. It's very warm here. But, there are bike lanes throughout entire downtown. There were young single people jogging, biking. I mean, to me, it almost didn't even feel like a downtown. And so the pictures that Al was showing of like the new construction of Little Caesars Arena, all of that, those pictures are absolutely accurate. There was so much new construction going on. You could tell there's just big development, both residential and commercial. But, it's one of those things you kind of have to see it with your own eyes. But it's like, of all the cities I had the worst perception about, it I think is the nicest downtown I've ever been to. So there's absolutely no exaggeration happening. And Al talking about the revitalization, everything going on there. It was what I saw, it was 100% accurate.
So I think you hit that right on the head, Allie. That statement you just said a second ago is one that I've heard many, many, many times, especially over the course of the last 5 years. Many people coming into Detroit, like I said, having this persona, of Detroit just being this ghost town and war zone. They come out here and they're like, hang on. You're trying to tell me that this neighborhood right here that I'm walking through or driving through is Detroit? I tell them, yes. I always pose the question. I say, hey, if I blindfolded you from the office and brought you a beeline straight to this neighborhood, and I said, open your eyes, guess what city we're in? Nobody would ever guess Detroit. Somebody would say, like, oh, this suburb or something. You took me to this high-end area, secluded area, or subdivision or whatnot, and that's not the case. And I can't wait for you guys that are on this call to come out here and see it firsthand.
Yeah.
Here in this slide, you'll also see some of the growth that's been happening year in, year out with the Metro Detroit area. You can also see some of the average home sales that we talked about earlier. And you'll also see like the 1% rule, where it kind of stands in regards to national pricing and averages and where we sit here in Detroit. And continuation to that with the District Detroit, that's kind of what Allie said a few minutes ago on what's happening in Detroit. I said it also that you have all 4 major sports teams all within a corner of each other where you can attend multiple games. With that, we're like the new toy, guys. This is probably the best way I can describe it. We're like a new toy where anything that it may be like old to you guys, like rooftop bars, for example, is new to us. So we are just kind of like soaking all of this in, and this is like a bursting balloon just kind of going off. Like we want more and more and more and more of it. And they're feeding it. The investors that are like the big real estate moguls that I talked about a second ago with Dan Gilbert and Mike Ilitch, they're bringing the big timers here, guys. They're bringing the big time money into Detroit. They've invested each over $2 billion of their own money, not including what other investors are bringing into the Metro Detroit area. But that we're going to talk about here in the next couple slides. But District Detroit, you can see here, this used to be actually a street where, you know, you drive on. This is Woodward Avenue. Woodward Avenue is the first paved road in the United States. And this paved road used to lead you to a factory that Henry Ford built. And he built this road, obviously, so his workers can get to and from work to home. So that's a pretty cool stat just to see what they've done with this. Now you can't drive on this road no more, and it's only walking. And on a game day, this is really what it looks like on game day. It's a super crowded area, and I'm not used to seeing that here in the Metro Detroit area. And it's kind of like, I'm very proud of it. Like I'm proud to say Detroit's my hometown. Here is what the map looks like. What you guys just seen here, this is Woodward Avenue that I was talking about a second ago. Right here, you have Comerica Park, which is where the Detroit Tigers play, the baseball team. You have Ford Field, which is where the Detroit Lions play. And then right across here, you have Little Caesars Arena. And this is where the Detroit Pistons and where the Detroit Red Wings play. And just across the street from here, they are building a new soccer stadium that they're going to be hosting a new Detroit MLS team, which is super exciting because then Detroit would be the only city in the country to have all 5 major sports teams within walking distance of each other in the downtown Detroit area. So we talked about some of the neighborhoods and what's upcoming there in the downtown area. What is it that's driving in the downtown area? What is it that flipped the switch? Well, here we go. A lot of this like dilapidated buildings and areas that have been kind of knocked down. You can see here Amazon's bringing 1,000 new jobs to the Shelby Township area. You have here Olympia Development, which is owned by Mike Illich, has over a $200 million project right now. This has already been built. So when you guys get here, you guys will actually see this. This has already been built. And you'll have a chance to see it. And this has already been built here too. And Google, which I'll talk about later too, also opened up an office here in the Little Caesars Arena. The cool thing about Little Caesars Arena, most people like think it's okay, it's just an area, it's just a stadium that hosts, you know, Red Wings games or Pistons game. No, you can actually come here on a weekday. There's restaurants and storefronts and retail shops that are all along this stadium. Kid Rock just opened up a new restaurant in the Little Caesars Arena that you can go to 7 days a week. Eminem just opened up a new place over there too. It's called Mom's Spaghetti, not too far from there as well. Some of the other ones that have been coming in here, I heard LinkedIn, we talked about Google, Microsoft. Microsoft is also opening up an office here in the Metro Detroit area. The tech jobs, this is something that I just want to spend a minute or two on, guys, because I can't stress this enough. Tech jobs have literally boomed out here in Detroit. Everybody knows Detroit as, you know, the motor city and the backbone of Detroit being the automotive industry, of course. But the diversity that's been happening over the last 7-8 years, it's been crazy. And one of the driving forces is the tech jobs. Nearly 10% of the Metro Detroit jobs right now are tech related. We are #1 in advanced auto industry jobs. You have here Henry Ford Health System being opened up. It's a $38 million medical center in Bloomfield. Bloomfield is an A-class area. I don't do much investing there, but I'm just seeing areas not only in downtown Detroit that is getting the revitalization, but also outside of the Metro Detroit area too. So I love seeing that. Once again, downtown Detroit, many people don't recognize some of the neighborhoods that surround it. I look at downtown Detroit kind of like a baby Chicago. For those of you that have not been to Chicago, if you ever were to walk down or Google Michigan Avenue, Chicago, it's quite illustrious to kind of see all the lights, all the people, all the walkers. Detroit, I felt like was going for something like that, a little bit warm, a little bit welcoming. And Allie touched on that earlier about the cleanliness and how safe she felt. And we were there on a November day, guys. I mean, imagine it on a nice spring or summer day, lunchtime on a Friday, or if you come on a game day, it's quite the scene. You have these buildings that are all being transformed into multi-use. From retail to also commercial as well as multifamily use. You have a $2.1 billion investment here planned for the downtown Detroit area. This is another slide where you're going to see this is almost done. This Hudson building, when you guys come out here, they are almost done with it, and I can't wait to show it to you guys. It's just about done, but the point of this slide is just to show you guys how much money is pouring into the Metro Detroit area, as well as how much new jobs and new employees and new employers are being invested here in Detroit. So the bread and butter of Detroit. Yes, everybody knows the big three. What else is out here? We talked about the tech industry. I want to touch a little bit about, Allie, if you recall when we were here, the medical industry, how much medical field plants we've seen in hospitals, as well as pop-up spots. They're coming up everywhere here. And I don't know if that's a COVID-related thing or whatnot, if it's happening in every city. I haven't done a lot of traveling as of lately, but I see it more and more and more. We talked a few slides ago about Henry Ford Health Systems. They got over a $38 million complex being built right now. So this is a quick little slide just to show you guys that, hey, there is diversity here outside of the auto industry. So for the rest of the slides, we are going to be talking, we're going to get away a little bit of Detroit and what's happening here. Allie, we have a couple options. We can either stop and take some questions about Detroit, or we can keep going and save the questions for later, and we can get into some neighborhoods and some properties.
Yeah, I was going to say, so if any of you guys have questions specific to Detroit as a city, we're going to start kind of segueing into the neighborhoods, the properties. Of course, you can ask anything at the end also, but if you do have specific questions about the city, go ahead and type them into the chat box, or you can raise your hand, and I'm happy to call on you also while we're on the topic of the city. And in the meantime, we'll see if anything comes in, and then we'll let Al kind of start getting into the specific neighborhoods.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess we'll just jump in, and then you can kind of stop me anytime, Allie. If you see something come in that's worthy of stopping, we can do that. So where we invest, quick little neighborhood overview. So we're only in safe and low crime areas. I mean, if I go to any major metropolitan city in the country, you have your good and you have your bad, just like you go anywhere else, whether you're in Beverly Hills or Detroit or Chicago or LA, whatever it is. And we always stay away from, no board ups, no vacancies, no vacant lots, no burn downs. We don't mess with any of those type of areas. Allie and I had the chance to spend a whole day together. We visited a handful of different neighborhoods in different cities. And what she probably noticed is there is a cookie cutter that we look for all of our properties, all of our neighborhoods. One thing I always like to look for is pride of ownership. Here's a great example of two photos, two different neighborhoods, both in Detroit. You can see on this right-hand side, you're probably in a little bit of a nicer B class, lower A class type of area. And on my left-hand side, you have more of a, B class. I just call that more of a solid B class here, more guided towards a rental market versus here you kind of have a mix of homeowners and renters. So we acquire properties located mostly in middle-class rental areas. Who are our major people that come and rent from us? It kind of varies, anywhere from, you can see on here, nurses, teachers, admin staff, retirees. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And the reason why it's such a wide list, such a big list that I said a second ago is because the transportation out here, guys, there isn't a ton of traffic where you're getting stuck in traffic. If you recall, Allie, I use what's called the 15-minute rule. She would ask me, so how far are we from, downtown Detroit? Almost every property we went to, I would always tell her, oh, we're about 15, 20 minutes away. And she just kind of found it funny that I kept using the same answer.
Well, and given that I live in Los Angeles, there's no such thing as 15 and 20 minutes. So like 15 to 20 minutes equates to, I don't know. So I was actually shocked that we could get anywhere in 15 minutes.
Yeah, you can kind of get around pretty easy here. If you have, 20 minutes, you can get it from one end of town to the other end of town. Even on game days, believe it or not, it's not too crazy. So that's why you can have people living in parts of Detroit outside of downtown Detroit that actually commute to Detroit. Also, same thing goes for the suburbs. You can have people living in the suburbs, but actually work in downtown Detroit. One cool fact that I want to share is about the population. I talked a little bit about that earlier. Allie and I went back and forth on this for a little bit, and we were able to find some facts about where the population growth is actually happening in Detroit versus where the population decreases in the Metro Detroit area as well. What I have seen over the course of the last few years is mostly more of the millennials that have been taking on the new jobs that have been popping up in Detroit, moving into downtown Detroit. And that's where we're seeing a lot of these high rises. That's kind of why you're seeing these new high rises, because housing is much, much, much in demand in the downtown area. And where you've seen the rental rates increase all the way up to almost north of $3,000. So getting into the next slide here.
Hey, before you leave that one of the questions which fits perfectly into this, what zip codes do, like Wayne County, Macomb County, and Oakland, what zip codes are some of the most common that you invest in? It was specifically what zip codes are best to look in for cash flow, buy and hold, collecting rent?
That's a great question. So I'm just going to sum it up for you. When I'm talking about Detroit, there are many, many, many zip codes that we do not invest in, but there are a select few that we do invest in that I can give out here. Once we're done with the slides, I'll pull up a few of them, and I'm going to have some properties that I'm going to actually show you guys. So I'll have the chance to share some actual zip codes here at the end, if that's okay.
Okay. And for everyone to know too, at the end of all of this, I think I forgot to mention this in the very beginning, is we're going to hit on the investors tour information. So the details on the trip. But one thing, when Al and I were scheduling this trip, talking about what we want to do, I asked him if we could potentially on our tour go through one of the neighborhoods where, you know, a lot of you guys, if you've been around the investing world, you've heard about the investor problems in Detroit, and you might be wondering about them. So like in looking at these pictures that are on the screen right now, obviously those are very different than pictures you may have seen from those, you know, old
Absolutely.
meth houses, you know, all the horror stories that you heard. So I actually asked Al if we could drive through one of those neighborhoods, like what were the neighborhoods that got investors in trouble? Because we want to be able to show you why that's different than like the neighborhoods in the street. So it's, you know, there's very contrasting differences in where those people were investing when they got in trouble versus where Al and investors now really are investing, and really what those differences are. So that's something we're going to hit on the trip so you can see that contrast.
Yeah. And one other question. Thanks for that, Ali. That's awesome. Yeah, definitely. We'll be able to put that as a part of our trip. Absolutely. One other question that popped up here is, I'm happy that it did, because I should have touched on it earlier, is, you know, green investors, newbie investors. So in the chat here, she posed the question, would a newbie investor purchase a turnkey property out of state, per se in Detroit, and then would traveling be required, or would the property manager be able to handle everything A to Z? Actually, because of the affordability in Detroit, many investors consider this to be like low risk. So it's an awesome first stepping stone for a newbie investor. A lot of my investors are newbie investors, and it makes a lot of sense to me because, like I said, of the affordability, of the low risk, that the low entry point to get into Detroit is one of the driving forces on why many people do invest in Detroit. For sure, cash flow is one of the most, you know, dominant reasons, but outside of that, as a newbie investor, I would highly recommend it. And we were
go ahead.
We're going to set you up with a property manager once the property closes, that Ali and I will talk about a little bit later once the slides are over. I'm sure that we'll save a minute or two for property management questions.
Yeah, and I'll throw a little plug in there that Al's not going to say, but I'm going to say it, which is from, you know, for a new investor, like you always hear like customer service really isn't typically a part of investing. It's like all about the numbers, all that. But for like new investors, like, let's be real. It's nerve-wracking. And my experience with turnkey providers, which is now the 12-year mark or something, no offense to turnkey providers, they're not always phenomenal on the customer service or communication side. It's because they're really good at what they do, the houses and the rehabs and the business. And oftentimes some of the best turnkey providers aren't very helpful for new investors because they move fast, they're hard hitting. And from, you know, Al gave you reasons why Detroit may be a good spot for new investors, but I can personally tell you that Al has the customer service side. He's great at communication. I've watched him work with some buyers to sell some properties already. I was floored at how easy he was to work with for them. So from the turnkey provider standpoint, Al, I would consider to be one of the exceptions to the God bless turnkey providers. the turnkey provider rule. And then as far as like whether to invest out of state, turnkeys in general, do you need to fly, all that kind of stuff, I'm happy to talk to anyone about that stuff. If you want to email me, my email's in the chat and I'll give it again later. I'm happy to help you with that. That's what I love doing, is I want everyone to be comfortable with what they're doing. So there's kind of the difference. Your question kind of hits a couple different routes, which is, should you go for Detroit? And then should you be going for out of state? What are the kind of more general logistics? And I'm happy to work with you personally on that anytime and answer questions.
Awesome. So we'll keep going. So we're going to get into some properties, some renovations, what these numbers look like, what's our bread and butter. Yes, we do offer multifamily, but our bread and butter is single family properties. These sizes range anywhere from 900 square feet all the way up to 2,000 square feet. And typically our properties are 3 bedrooms or more, and they either have a basement or a 1 to 2 car garage. That's our typical right there, bread and butter property. These price ranges range anywhere from $80,000 all the way up to $150,000. Now, let me touch a little bit about the $80,000 properties. So I only really offer turnkey properties, but we do sometimes make exceptions for investors that are not first-time investors. And we offer what's called like a rental resale or like a reliable rental. And these are properties that we've either acquired or have in our inventory that already have a tenant in place that were not rehabbed by us. They're not turnkey. This is something Allie and I will discuss as well. That's where that $80,000 price range is as well. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. Those are more for kind of seasoned investors. Estimated price ranges can go anywhere from $800 all the way up to $1,600. I've even seen it go north of that. But
my favorite part about this slide is that if you just showed this to someone who is from California or lives in California, no one's going to believe anything that's on this slide.
Oh, it's true.
I'm like, now that 200 square foot typo, now that's actually more accurate. And no one has a 3-bedroom house here, and $80,000 doesn't even buy you a bathroom here. So, you know, but all of this is true. It's actually true.
So here's our renovation standards, guys. You'll have a couple different options here. We've recently started doing the white cabinets. I don't know how I feel about it. I like it. Don't get me wrong. It's just that, you know, the wear and tear, and, you know, somebody's hands are greased and they touch the cabinets and whatnot. So we're kind of in that phase right now where we're trying it out. So far, so good. No complaints, no issues. I haven't had any maintenance requests or anything like that, or any tenant turns so far with these white cabinets. So far, so good. But you guys all know how the trends are. You know, the mocha's kind of out and the brown is kind of out. So everybody's kind of doing the white and grays. So we're transitioning with the time as well. But we do these beautiful kitchens where there's new cabinets. Some of them we even if it's in a nicer step up area, we do soft closings. Some of them we even do Corian tops. It all really depends. But most of the time we're going granite countertops, new cabinets. We use vinyl plank flooring, or you'll see tiled flooring like you do in the right photo. Stainless steel sink, backsplash, hood vents. That gets that in every single property. This is our typical property right here. Bathrooms, typical bathroom right here. You see a little bit bigger bathroom on the left-hand side over here, a little smaller bathroom on the right-hand side. This is probably more of your 1,000 square foot property. You get your vanity, you got your toilet, bathtub there. It has a nice surround shower. Kind of almost has that hotel-esque feel to it. Here's the problem.
Al, before you go back on the rehab standards, can you address CapEx? What are your assumptions, requirements for that? And do you warranty the work? And for anyone, we're about to say the term CapEx a lot. It stands for capital expenditures. So it refers to all the big items: roof, plumbing, hot water heaters, the big things. And typically with turnkey properties, most of the providers will ensure that all of the major things have a certain amount of life left. So can you speak to that? And then also what your warranties or guarantees are?
Yeah, thanks for that reminder right there. But yes, we actually try to hit all the major ticket items, from, like Allie mentioned, roofing, windows, furnaces, hot water tanks. When does it merit a replacement is really the question I get a lot. So anything that has, like, depending on what it is, like if it's a roof, typically most of the time, even HVAC units, most of the time when you have these vacant houses that we're buying, or ones that have been sitting there for a while. Most of the time you're getting everything new, which is what I just showed you in these photos. 90% of the time, all the way from HVACs to roofing to windows, all of that is touched on for us. When it's not replaced is if it has like 10 years of life or more, where it just doesn't make sense, where we're kind of now raising the price for you guys. A lot of times I get that question is, how can I get into a property for like 100K where maybe I can still touch 1%, but it doesn't need to have all the bells and whistles that I just discussed a second ago. I don't have many of those products, all right, because typically we do cookie cutters inside of our property. We use the same materials. So it's not like I use something that's cheaper than one and another. I use the same material in all the properties. And so I don't really offer those type of discounts on, hey, can I get some of a less of a renovation type of property? No, we don't really do that. We're going to do it right. We're going to do it the whole way. And that is what Allie just talked about a second ago, from the windows to the wall. You want to go some more on that, or do you want to say something?
And if you can hit on like any warranties or guarantees, like so one thing for everyone to know, and all the the seasoned turnkey people know this, but when you're in your due diligence period on the properties, you'll get a third-party property inspection. So it's really up to you to ensure. You never want to take Al's word for anything. You never want to take my word for anything. You want to make sure that the property is up to the advertised standard. The CapEx items are done, the rehab's up to par, and once you close, or whatever, you can be in communication with Al. Do you guys have a formal warranty thing, like if something happens right after you close, or how do you normally work if anything goes wrong?
Yeah. So nothing formal, nothing in writing. We don't offer any like warranties or guarantees or anything like that, but there is a but. Have I ever had the property management contact me and tell me, Al, this tenant just moved in, hey, they're having this plumbing issue? Yeah, things like that happen. I go in there and take care of it. Yeah, of course, absolutely. I've had actually something even 100 times worse happen, where a person bought a property and something unforeseen popped up, where the tenant was experiencing a sewer issue, where the property was backing up. And, we went and took care of it, and we had to do a dig out. And we, for one instance, I remember splitting the cost with one guy. In another instance, we covered most of the costs. So some things like that can happen. I'm not going to say these are bulletproof properties, no, but we go to the fullest extent to even city certifications, Allie. If you recall, we did that for one of your buyers, all the way from these inspectors that come in. They do roofing, they do HVAC, they do mechanical, they do zoning, they do safety, the whole 9 yards. And you'll have that city certification. You'll have a past city inspector come through the property, as well as a lead inspector, before you even take ownership of the property. That would all be done for you A to Z. So to answer your question, there's no black and white, other than no, we do not offer formal warranties or guarantees. But if things pop up, guys, this is not a onesie twosie type of relationship. I don't make a sale, pass you on, and never speak with you again. No, this is a relationship that I'm looking to build with every single one of you guys. I'm looking for investors that are looking to build a portfolio with tens of properties, and equate that to you and I being a relationship, hopefully for tens of years. Mm-hmm. And that's something.
And I'll vouch for that. I've seen, like I said earlier, I've seen Al work with some buyers, and they got their property inspection in, and Al went what I would consider to be above and beyond to make sure, like, I can vouch that Al is in it for the long-term relationship. Like he said, this is not a transactional one-by-one property thing. Like, he really enjoys developing the relationship with you guys. And obviously, in order to do that, I don't want to say he has to make you happy, but like I've seen him put out significant effort in. And in addition to that, it is on the buyer. And if you've known me for very long, I really want to shout turnkey due diligence from the rooftop, is get that property inspection and really go through it. Like, you are real investors, you're buying real houses, and you want to put forward that effort into making sure that you are getting what is advertised and the property's in a certain condition. And then, like he said, if something kind of out of left field happens, we can all be in communication about it. his priority is that relationship. So know that you're in good hands. And one of the questions, I do see a lot of the questions coming in, and if I don't hit it right now, and Iris, I apologize, I missed one of your questions earlier. I'm going to go back through all the questions at the end. So I'm just kind of doing the ones related to what we're saying, but are inspections and appraisals allowed? Absolutely. Not only are they allowed, I really beg everybody to do them, because that is that due diligence. And, you know, a lot of people on the appraisal front want to, you'll Zillow things about like, oh, everything around there is really cheap. It's like, just wait for the appraisal, like see what the appraisal says. As far as the property condition, yes, get the inspection. And not only are they allowed, I want you guys to really do those.
Excuse me. So we actually have the buyer sign like a sign off saying that they don't want an inspection. I make every buyer get an inspection, and it's all third party. You guys can choose your inspector, but typically I offer you guys a list from insurance agencies to inspectors, whatever resource I can give you, I want to offer it.
And if you guys do have general questions about turnkey inspection reports, like what's that process? So you hire that inspector, they go in, and then they send you this report back. Usually reports, turnkey or not, are usually fairly intimidating looking. What's the process from there? If you have questions on that, shoot me an email, because I'll send you some information on that, because I like for everyone to kind of understand what they're working with. So that way you feel like you're in control of what's going on, like you have a say in it. It's not just like you're laid back, like, oh, this is happening and I don't really know what to do. Like, I will absolutely help you navigate that. No problem.
Yeah, I'm happy you brought that up. And typically what I do when that report comes back, you obviously get the chance to see it first. I immediately schedule a Zoom call with you. I share my screen. We go over each and every single one of those items that the inspector called out. If it merits a repair or something, one of us going back there and repairing it for you prior to closing, I don't have a problem talking about it, discussing it. And if it needs it, we go back and repair it prior to closing. We send you before and after photos showing you each and every single repair that was done to your satisfaction. Cool, Allie? Keep going?
Yep, keep going.
So finally, what everybody came here to see. We have a few properties that we're going to be sharing. Actually, we have a couple properties that we're going to be sharing right now that are example properties. I just want to repeat that. These are example properties that, we've sold these before already. We have a little surprise for you guys at the end, but we're going to get into this first, okay? So here's an example property that was of a property that wasn't sold too long ago. This is in East Point, Michigan. This is in the suburbs, about 15, 20 minutes away from downtown Detroit. You can see this purchase price, $125,000, nearly 1% rent to value ratio at $1,200 estimated rent. Question I get all the time, Al, your performance says $1,200. Am I getting $1,200 if I close on the property without a tenant in place? I would say I have over a 900 batting average. So I'd say 90% you're going to get $1,200 or more. I feel very confident when I say that. I don't just jot numbers down just to throw, performa juicers. We don't do that. I actually will go over these comparables with you. So I'll jump on another Zoom call with you. We will go on accredited sites. We will use the MLS. We will use data to show you the comparable rents in the area. I feel like I'm maybe middle of the road on rents. I probably have a little bit of room to go up, but for the most part, I save that little surprise for you guys at the end. Once you finally close on the property and realize, hey, I got $1,250 in rent, not $1,200 that I expected. Bonus.
Better to under promise and over deliver.
Absolutely, bonus.
And also, while we have this, I realized we didn't clarify as far as whether your turnkeys are sold with or without tenants. And you can confirm if I'm correct in saying this, it's been a mix. Some of them have tenants already, some of them do not, if you want to add anything to that.
Absolutely. There's times that you're going to put a property under contract that hasn't even maybe started renovation. And there's times that you're going to put a property under contract that has a tenant moving in 2 weeks. But just know the fact that if you do close on a property that does not have a tenant, most of the time, you're probably going to have a tenant already lined up. It's maybe they're moving in on the 1st of the month and you're closing on whatever, the 21st, for example, and you have a rate lock that you need to get in at a certain time and close at a certain time. And your tenant is going to be moving in shortly after your closing. So typically that's how we run our course of action when it comes to closing with and closing without a tenant.
And I think it'll be, and correct me if I'm wrong, it'll be fair to say, like, if you have a preference for tenants in place, we can work with you to make sure you get a property that either the tenants are already in or they're lined up. Like there's room for accommodating any preferences on that front.
Yeah, absolutely. That's no problem. I haven't run into many issues with that. Here are some estimated first year cash flows for those of you that are interested in buying, a cash transaction. After your property management fees, taxes, insurance, typically this is what you're going to be looking at a yearly standpoint. And then if you're financing, you're looking at about $2,500 for your first year.
And we will, after we show you the couple just sample properties, these two aren't available. We will show you, we'll actually bring out a detailed pro forma, because obviously, some of you might be asking, like, what are the expenses? What goes into these numbers? Don't worry, we have you covered. This is just to kind of give you a ballpark of what is available in Detroit.
So this was a suburb property. This is a Detroit property. Now, what's the difference? Typically, once you get into Detroit, sometimes depending on the area, you're going to be going more into the B class, where here in the suburb, you're probably going to be more of the B plus. Okay. So you're going to get a little bit of a step up. Now, is there a trade-off? Absolutely. This is going to offer a little bit more cash flow on the front end. This will offer a little bit more appreciation on the front end. So depending on what you're looking for, where most people are looking for cash flow, this is why we're on this property right here. I recall this house when we sold it. I think this one ended up getting $1,200. So they bought it for $115. They got $1,200 in rent. Awesome rent to value ratio, over 1%, exceeded the investor's expectation. Like Ali said, they were extremely happy. And this is a great property in the city of Detroit. At the time that it was sold, this one got a full turnkey rental. Recall that. You can see the roof also is new. New HVAC, new kitchen, new painting, new vinyl plank flooring, new bathroom, the whole 9 yards. When you have a tenant walk into one of our properties, one of the things that really separates us from the competition is our renovations. I can't stress that enough. We try to really separate ourselves from the competition when it comes to the renovations. We take very much pride into that. If you recall in the first slide that I showed you guys today, we come from a foundation of a construction company, of a renovation team. So we know what we're doing when it comes to renovations, and we know what tenants are looking for, especially when we treat it like a homeowner property. So imagine having a tenant walk into your property and it's like the best property that they've seen since their agent's been showing them. And they're like, oh, I want it. Not only does that cause interest and demand, but it also brings longevity. Our average tenancy right now is roughly 3 years. With the management company I'm working with today, I've been with them now since 2020. I've had zero, and I'll put a double donut up there, 0 evictions since I've worked with them. Not had one of my properties come back to me, and not one of my owners come back to me and tell me, Al, the tenant that they put in there is being evicted, they're not paying, or they stop paying. That's happened 0 times. I am so proud to say that. I'm saying it on a recorded live camera. And, it's great to marry the performance with what you see on the screen with the actual performance that you're going to get in your mailbox.
And after the properties, we will hit more on the property management side, because you guys may have questions on that. And I just want to quickly, before he goes much further, clarify something that I wasn't clear on. Maybe you guys are clear on it, but I wasn't initially. Is he talked about the last property was in the suburbs, and this one is Detroit Metro. When I hear a metro area about a downtown, usually in my experience, a metro area is about this big and all the suburbs are all around it. And it took me a second to realize that Detroit is actually different. Detroit Metro is huge. You saw the maps that he showed earlier. So I was surprised when I was there and touring properties. We only went to one property in the suburbs, because any other market that I've been in, typically that's where the properties are in the suburbs, and nobody really typically thinks about thinking in investing in the metro area of a particular larger city. So just in case anybody was confused on that, is that most of the properties I saw, at least, and I don't know if it's most of what Al has, but the majority are Detroit Metro, which I know for me sounded unclear. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there in case there's any confusion, is that Detroit Metro spans a way bigger region than I've found big cities to typically cover.
Correct.
Like it took us a hot minute to get to the suburb, right? Like, you know, so it's, you know, it's, you think of downtown and it can just get confusing. So if anyone has questions on that, we can, you know, go back to more maps later or whatever. I just want, so when you hear Detroit Metro, if anyone's intimidated by that, it has the feeling of a suburb. Like there's really no difference in this neighborhood being, it felt as suburban as the suburb properties as well. It's not like you're in the middle of downtown Detroit with this house.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Ellie. That's very informative, and this kind of leads into my next slide as well, because everybody's gonna probably want to know, hey, where are the properties? But most importantly, we need to get you financed. We need to get you pre-approved. And our
I saw Graham just turn his camera on.
Man, Graham.
If anybody missed it, if you weren't on the call just yet, Graham hopped on here, and I was like, hang on. We have a special guest that has no idea I'm about to call him out. If anyone has been around Turnkey World for 5 seconds, you've probably heard Graham Parham's name. He's one of the most popular turnkey lenders. He's one of my favorite humans. I love talking to Graham on the phone, catching up on whatever is happening in lending world. So you have a huge resource with him on this call right now. So just saying.
Thank you. I wasn't going to turn my my camera on because I didn't have my Michigan shirt on.
I was like, are you in your pajamas? Like, ooh.
Yeah, well, that's, I mean, I can stand up and show you my sweats, but I'm not going to. But I will have to reiterate what Allie said at the beginning of the webinar. Yeah, I was up in Detroit 20 years ago, and it was the demilitarized zone. I mean, you don't want to walk out anywhere without a gun or whatever. And then, fortunately, I had the chance to get up there right before COVID, I think it was, Al. Yes. And he took me on the same tour that you went to, Allie. And oh my God, talk about revitalization on steroids. It was incredible. And just seeing all the development and the downtown, it's just, I was blown away. And so what I was trying to say, the same thing you're trying to say, Al and Allie's, you just don't know it until you get up there and look at it. And I think the tour will satisfy everybody's curiosity.
Yeah, I totally agree. And if you're, Graham, if you have a little bit of time, when we finish the presentation, when we get into the Q&A, if you guys throw all your lending questions in. If you want to know about the rates, if you want to know what's happening, we've got Graham here. So throw those in the chat. I'm seeing all the questions come in, so we'll be able to hit all those. But any lending specific questions, because normally these calls are about the turnkey questions, on the property questions and all that, but you have a lender right in front of you. So I suppose me and Al can stop talking about properties for a minute if you have your lending questions. So we have Graham here. So start throwing those in the chat, or you can chat with him in a little bit.
Yeah, we can do that now or whenever you want, Ellie.
Do you want to, I think before, let's leave all the questions to the end. And then maybe if you want to show a property or so that's available now, and we can show the detailed pro forma, and then we can hop right into the questions, because I want to not tie everybody up all night either. So we'll wrap this up, and then that way people can come and go if they need to.
We did pretty good. We're right at the 60-minute mark from the time that we started. And we are pretty much done because we're at the question part. So what I was going to do now is I'm going to bring out couple properties. I'll start off with the Appoline property that Allie can actually send to you guys, or you guys can go to the website and take a look at.
Do you have a picture you can show them? Or I have one. Let's see.
Here you go. I can probably.
You have it.
I got it. Yeah, I understand. No, I don't think no. I'll have to find one, but as we go, I'm gonna give you remote access, Allie, so you can kind of now use your mouse on the screen, and you can go over this pro forma with everybody watching, and then I'll pull up a photo of it when you're done.
Okay. Yeah, so for a visual context, picture this house doesn't look much, it looks similar to that last brick house you saw. This is a cute little brick house. I'll let Al tell you about the neighborhood. mostly because I forget which one this was in of the few that we saw. I was really impressed with the neighborhoods that we toured, and Graham may be able to second this if he saw some of the properties. I'll let Al tell you about the neighborhood, but this is kind of a detailed breakdown of the numbers. So if you scroll down, so this one's listed at 128,000. You'll notice the rent. Huh?
You can scroll it down. You have control.
I can. Oh, okay. Just a little delayed. Yeah, so the purchase price is right here. And you'll notice that this is a 1% rule property. As far as anyone concerned about the 1% rule, most of the properties are either at it or teetering very close. There's not many markets where you can hit that these days. So if that is in your purview as something you're looking for, you get pretty close in Detroit, about as close to, once you get into the lower class properties, you can get 1% rule pretty easy, but these are nice houses. Once you see the picture of Appoline, if you're interested I toured this property and I have a video from when I was there. I'm happy to share it with anybody who is interested. If you got on late, if you scroll all the way up in the chat, my email address is there. I'll type it again later, but if you have questions on this one, so just kind of running through the numbers, 120 on the purchase price, 1,300 on the rent. You can see the property taxes, insurance, management fees. Their property manager, I believe, it's either 9 or 10%. Is that right, Al?
That's correct.
I think this one's listed at 9%.
Yes.
So before financing, we're looking at about $866 a month after the mortgage payments. Let's see, what rate do we have in here? Don't look, Graham. I may have it wrong. So this is a 6.5 rate with 25% down. So I can also send you guys copies of this pro forma. And what's nice about it is that you can change, if you talk to Graham and you realize it's a different rate, if you're only going to do 20% down, all of this is editable. That's a very hard word to say. So you will have access to this. You can see these numbers over here in the green. It's your cap rate, cash on cash return. And back to the cash flow. So after financing, this would be $259 a month. Again, depending on your financing, you can tweak that a little bit. And then there's different breakdowns like the 30-year pro forma. I never really look at those. Well, does that not even exist? I don't know. So I usually don't even look at that. I consider all that stuff a bonus, but that information is in there, although maybe not on one of those tabs. But you can see all the detailed numbers here. Al, if you want to talk just briefly about the Scholze neighborhood, and then if you do have that picture.
Yeah, I will. I'll get that up. So, Allie, if you recall, you and I visited the Scholze neighborhood.
Yeah, absolutely.
You remember the Steele property?
Yeah. So if anybody, that Steele property is the one that we did the Facebook Live on. So if you were in the Facebook group and you watched our live, that was the Steele Avenue property, which was like, people are still talking about that property. It was a pretty good property. That one went under contract. I mean, it's long gone, but this, similar area. So when we're talking about the Steele property, that's how good it was, is that it has its own name.
The name of the road is Steel.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, of course, it was
easily one of the, if not, it was one of the nicest neighborhoods we saw. They were all fantastic, but that one especially was extra nice.
Yeah, so this is in the Scholze neighborhood, just on Detroit's northwest side, and it like I says here, it's mostly it's one of the mostly densely populated neighborhoods in Detroit. And what I love about this area, if you recall, Allie, it has the beautiful tree-lined streets where every property kind of has its own unique shape and character to it. And to me, that drives a lot of desirability, not only to homeowners but to renters. Also, values. It helps tremendously with values. And when we're talking about educational institutes, there isn't many better areas in Detroit than this Scholze neighborhood when it comes to location to what's next to you institutionally, as well as grocery stores, as well as malls. You have easy access to highways. If you recall, we jumped on, I think it was M10. Me and you, Allie, jumped on M10 real quick, then took I-96. So it's really accessible to that aspect as well. Getting to and from work is no issue with considering traffic. So this property is available. This property does have a tenant that's already moved in as well. So this is all confirmed, good to go. They're in the property. You can close on this one really quick. I have photos of the property. It's on Allie's site. We have videos of the property. It's on Allie's site. Anything you may need information-wise, you can contact Allie. She'll be more than happy to set you up. And if you want to take the step further, she'll get you in contact with me, and we can get into even more details after that.
I didn't even think about it. I can just put the link to the property in the chat. Genius. I was overthinking like, oh, how can we share it? And all right, it's coming to you guys in the chat. And obviously when you see the picture, it was taken before I don't know if the rehab was done yet, but you'll see the big piece of plywood in the window. Obviously that does not come with the property. Oh, you got it too. Perfect.
This is what the link that Allie sent here, but you guys will have a chance to see it with some photos. You guys get it. You guys can go through it.
Yep.
Let me see here. 1 second. I want to show them one photo actually. Where'd it go?
Just a little plug. Hipster has a brand new website about to launch. So if you're looking at this website and you're like, wow, that's old looking, it's not going to be there for much longer.
Yeah, you guys can take a look at that at your own leisure, but I don't want to keep Graham too late, and I want to kind of go through some of your guys' questions. We do have one little surprise for you guys. Allie, if it's cool with you, I'll jump into that now. Is that okay?
Sure. Mostly because I forgot what it is. Like, oh boy, what is it? What is it?
So I know we've had some people join us. It's kind of late where you guys are, and I want to just say once again, thank you for staying here with us during this whole time. We decided to actually showcase this new property. This is the first time I advertise this property, and you guys are the first ones to see it. Allie's going to put it on her own spreadsheet and her numbers, but for now, this is the property. It's in the city of Detroit. You'll have a chance to see. We talked about zip codes earlier. Here's a quick little zip code you guys can look up, 48227. Yes, we do invest in this area. There's some excellent subdivisions in this area that we buy in and that we try to kind of hone in on. Here's a property that is going and enduring the renovation standards that we talked about earlier. I am hoping that I'm going to be somewhat kind of either done with it or at least be able to have a chance to walk through it during the client tour at the end of next month. For those
So I actually got to tour this property when I was there. It was, I don't even think the rehab had started, if I remember correctly. This house was amazing. And I'm putting, this is one of the benefits of being on the call. I don't know if all the chat stuff goes to the replay. I have no idea, but I'm putting in the chat the link to the actual video that I took of this property. Again, the rehab was not there. You've seen pictures of rehab, so you just, picture it rehabbed, but I loved this property. So you guys can see that video from the chat or save the link. I have no idea how Zoom works. If you want to copy the link and save it on your computer, just so you have it after the Zoom call ends, that way you don't lose it. Worst case, if you do lose it, just email me and you can see it then.
Yeah,
or I can send it to you.
This little performer that we put together, I do have it at 7.5% here. But don't pay too much attention to these numbers. Like I said, Allie's going to publish it herself. It's only going to go to the people that are going to be watching this and actually signing up for the tour. They're the only ones that are going to get first dibs on this property.
And actually, I'll put a little note in there. So Al has the interest rate set at 8%. I'm pretty sure Graham will be able to tell us that you can get lower than 8%, which means these numbers are actually only going to get better.
Yeah, I have it at 7.5, but for some reason it rounded up.
Oh man, I thought it was a like hardcore 8. I was like, oh
no, it's a 7. It's right there. But you guys can use your own numbers. You can use your own CapExes, like Allie talked about earlier. For those of you that are not familiar with that, Allie's there for your guys' expense. Call her, speak with her, schedule a call, email her. She will hold your hand through this whole process and make this as seamless as possible when she actually turns you guys on to us. Then we will then both work with Graham, and Graham is like the best in the business with this. And he will also hold your hand because that's his forte. He does turnkey investment properties. He is the most renowned lender nationwide when it comes to turnkey properties. So he knows what he's doing, guys. We've done many, many, many deals together. I've worked with Graham for years, and we have a great rapport together. So this team that you're speaking with tonight, with myself, Allie, and Graham, we are here for you guys. We are here tonight for you guys. And we're here to make this happen for you guys and grow everybody's portfolio together. And we find this relation to be not only mutually beneficial, but a growing one amongst us three.
Yeah, and I want to, we were about to go into the question and answer thing, and I completely forgot one of the biggest topics. We almost skipped right over it, is this investors tour that we are talking about. So I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of how this is going to work, and then you can ask questions, and then we'll hop into all the questions. So we are inviting everyone to come to Detroit. I know that had I not gone there in, I think it was November, that I wouldn't have believed all this hype and revitalization and all that kind of stuff. I had a similar perception that a lot of other people have had about Detroit because of former horror stories. And I would not have believed that it's not true had I not been there. So we want to invite people to come to Detroit. I will be there. Al will be there. I'm trying to convince Graham to be there. He hasn't given me an answer yet, but we'll see. So the way it's going to work is it is the weekend of April 28th through the 30th. The 28th is Friday, 29th Saturday, 30 is Sunday. The actual tour itself is primarily on that Saturday. And I say that to say that if you have to get in late Friday night, or if you have to leave Saturday night, if you can't be there the whole weekend, that is 100% okay. So the way that the weekend is going to work is you can fly in anytime on Friday. About 6 o'clock that night, we will do a casual like meet and greet, hang out. It'll kind of be like almost like open house style from 6 to 9, or however late we decide, how many party animals we have. But like you can meet Al, you can meet me if we haven't met already. Just very casual, everybody hang out. If you want to bring your spouses, whoever, everybody's welcome. Saturday we'll wake up, we'll do just kind of, we'll go see Al's office, just get, that's not where the exciting stuff is, but you can see that they actually have an office and see Al, you can meet different people, and then we will hop in a shuttle or a van or whatever, depending on how many people we have. We'll all be together and we will go do a property tour. So we'll go to the different neighborhoods. We will, I'm assuming, see properties in different levels of condition. They may be pre-construction. We'll see obviously some completed rehab, so you can get a feel for exactly what that rehab quality is. Some may be mid-rehab, but you'll get an idea of the neighborhoods. Al will be on the bus or shuttle with us. You can ask questions real time. We will go to downtown Detroit. There will be food involved, of course. We'll keep you fed. We will go to downtown Detroit, and then so you can see all of this revitalization. We'll try to hit one of those neighborhoods that got investors in trouble, so you can see the contrast to where you could be investing now. And then when we get back on Saturday, it's a long day, but it's a very fun. I love these trips. It's so fun. We will do, everyone will be on their own for dinner, but Al will be hanging out. We'll be lounging around. You can ask questions. You can, whatever you need, Al is at your disposal. And then Sunday, you're welcome to fly out anytime you want. I'm sure whichever ones of us are left, we'll go grab breakfast or hang out. If you have follow-up things for Al, you can touch base with him on those. So basically it's a all weekend thing, but also kind of just really mostly that Saturday, just for your own planning. Al there's a hotel, a really nice Holiday Inn Express right next door to his office. I stayed there last time and it was amazing. It was one of those nice, modern, really new ones. And he's working with the hotel right now to get us a discount rate. It's kind of a normal hotel rate. It's nothing astronomical, but he's going to see, depending on how many people we get on the trip, the greater the discount may get. So if you're interested in the trip, email me and let me know, and I will pass on the hotel information when we have it, because we want to make sure before you book the hotel that you have that discount code. We'll have that ready for you. And one thing that I do want Al to hit on, and then we're going to get right into the question and answers, is any incentives. If you fly yourself out to Detroit, you make that effort to come on this trip, then if you were to purchase a property there, Al has set up a couple of incentives to, he wants to say thank you and also reimburse your travel expenses. So I will let him hit on that, and then I'll say one more thing about the strip. But Al, do you want to hit the incentives?
Yeah, I wrote down a few things, guys. And one thing that came to mind is anybody that pulls the trigger and acquires a property during this trip, I was going to give 1 year's worth of free property management service. That was one thing I had in mind, okay? The other thing I had in mind, which is the more traditional, is we would be willing to refund your travel expenses, which include your room and airfare, and apply that towards your purchase. So that's kind of where we're at right now. And Allie and I will firm up whatever way we decide to go, but that's typically what we're going to do, is offer that kind of incentive for you guys. I mean, you're going to be spending your time being away from your family, and spending money coming out here to meet us and to learn more about this area. And we want to give you guys all of our attention, and we want to give also the incentive for those of you guys that are going to be spending out of pocket.
Thank you. Well, and the one last blurb I want to say about this trip, and this goes for any investor's trip. I was saying it earlier about shouting due diligence from the rooftops. It's oftentimes, unfortunately, common with turnkeys, because you hear their hands-off rental properties and, you know, everything's done for you and all you have to do is sign on the dotted line. And my experience over the years is something about that messaging tells people that they don't need to do due diligence. And so one of my biggest things is I really want people to take charge of doing due diligence. Al's not going to be offended if you say you don't trust him. I don't think you should trust him. I don't want you to ever buy a property because I said it's good. I don't want you to buy it because Al said it's good. I want you to buy it because you feel good about it. And with all of that said, in my experience with turnkeys and going to meet different providers and going to different properties, there are few tools better for due diligence in my book than my own eyeballs. And, you know, we can tell you until the cows come home how great Detroit is, how great the neighborhood is, how great the property is, how great the rehab is. It's all great. But until you've actually seen it with your own eyeballs, I wish more people would go see turnkeys before they buy them. If you want to buy turnkeys and never see them, fine, so be it. But my experience has been when you meet the people and you've got a face to a name right now, but when you're in person with Al, it develops a rapport. You get a feel for him as a human. When you go see these properties in these neighborhoods, I don't care what statistic you pull up about a neighborhood, crime stats, schools, whatever it is, there's just nothing that can give you the feeling that your own eyeballs give you. And of course, don't just use your eyeballs, get the property inspection, do the neighborhood due diligence, all that kind of stuff. But when you can add seeing it and experiencing it yourself in that packet of due diligence, in my experience, there's nothing like it. So, you know, like I said, I don't want you to ever buy a property because me or Al or anyone told you, or even Graham might tell you it's a great property. I want you to do it because you feel good about it. And I have just not found a better way to see how I really feel about something than to go see it. So part of this trip intention is to show you Detroit, show you that things you may have heard about it or whatever are likely not true anymore. And also really from the investing perspective is so you can feel good about what you're buying. Like you can actually put your hand on the property that you're buying. It's just a different experience. So that's why we want to open this up. And my last little plug is these investor trips in all the years I've been doing them, whether I'm the guest, you know, I started as a turnkey buyer. I wasn't working with the providers. I was buying them and going on these trips. The coolest thing about it for me, aside from putting my own eyeballs on what in the world I'm buying, so I'm not just buying a property over the internet, is the people who come on these trips. Real estate investors, suddenly you're in this crowd of like-minded people. We all have the same goals. We have similar questions. We're all out to get the same thing. And it just creates this really cool vibe of we're just kind of all together and it's fun. You make new friends. Even if you go on this trip or you know for sure that you can't buy right now, it's still a phenomenal experience just to you hear questions from other people that maybe you didn't think you should ask. It's such a learning opportunity. So with that, I will step off of my tour soapbox. If you're interested in joining us on the tour, I would absolutely love to have you. The sooner that we know you are coming would be really helpful, just because we can find out, the hotel discounts, all that stuff. So email me if you even think you're interested in. I believe we said, was it April 14th as kind of the deadline to let us know, because we also have to rent the bus or the shuttle or whatever. We kind of need to have a head count. So think about it. Hopefully you can do it. And with that, throw your questions into the chat. I'm going to start down the list. And if you want to ask either Al or Graham a question in person, if you're willing to, I guess you don't even have to put your camera on, but if you want to, you can raise your hand in the Zoom if you want to actually ask it instead of just typing it. So let me scroll back here. Iris, I apologize if you're still on here. I missed one of your questions and it may have been answered. What are the industries being developed in Detroit since the car manufacturers are gone? What is the employment forecast? I think we talked a lot about the industries. We talked about tech, all of that. Al, do you have a quick answer to the employment forecast of Detroit?
Yeah, with the diversity that diversity slide we talked about with, the new tech jobs, the new health industry, so especially with the new millennials that have been moving into the downtown area, it's definitely generated a lot of employment as well as employers, and all the tax benefits that these businesses are now getting. It's quite incredible to see that shift going from automotive to almost, totally away from that. But also plugging in the tech industry with automotive, it's also nice to see the marriage, making it now one of the top cities outside of Silicon Valley for tech industrial jobs.
Thank you. So the 80K is a non-renovated house. For the most part, unless you're an experienced investor, I wouldn't worry about those 80K houses that Al was talking about. Just focus on the turnkeys for now. And then the question was, let's say the turnkey is approximately 130. Why would I then invest in Detroit instead of other states with similar price ranges, but less risk and warmer? So Al, you may have an answer to this. I would say just very generally is that I don't know that there's less risk in other markets. It depends on, that's kind of a broad thing. I would not say that Detroit is riskier by any stretch. And one thing I will say too, this is a little bit of I guess it's not a sidebar, it's kind of an answer. Someone asked me recently what market I'm focusing on right now, and it's Detroit. Because the reason for that is, from what I can tell, it is the best combination of cash flow and appreciation potential. In the last several years, shy of kind of the COVID quirk of everything appreciating like crazy, prices got high. After the crash, there were major appreciating markets like Atlanta, Dallas. The appreciation booms were huge. But after post-crash time, when prices got higher and they kind of started settling out, there were no longer, in my experience, markets that were expecting some massive appreciation boom. Some appreciate more than others, some are more stable, yes, but nothing was really, again, the COVID work kind of happened and everything experienced appreciation. But that aside, there just hasn't been a big appreciating market, in my opinion. And Detroit is the first time in a while, in a handful of years, and Graham may actually have some thoughts on this too, because he loans in all different states. But Detroit, for me, has the best combination of cash flow and appreciation. So when you're thinking about things like that, it's very possible that Detroit is not any riskier than anyone else. And just kind of more logistically, many of the markets that are available that someone may consider less risk. I don't think there are less risky markets, but a lot of them don't have the cash flow anymore. Kansas City has been a big one that's appreciated huge over the years. And the cash flow there now, it's still a very solid market. There's still appreciation potential in my mind, but the cash flow is much lower than you're going to see in Detroit. So that's one reason, that would be my argument why someone would consider Detroit. I think it has so much more growth potential than a lot of the markets. I don't know if Graham or Al has anything to chime in before I drift to another question.
I work with a lot of different turnkey providers all over the country. And what Al has touched on today about the 1% rule and still coming close to that, you don't see that anymore. Al, you can agree. Very few markets can do that, and Detroit still does it. And that's a really good thing. Most of those markets that we were talking about earlier, what, 4 or 5 years ago, we may have hit the 1%, but that went away after COVID, the appreciations and everything else, but it's still very solid up there.
And in most cases, if you're, a lot of you are probably in the Facebook group, like I'm working with properties on the Illinois side of St. Louis right now that well hit the 1%, like well surpassed the 1% rule, but you are going into a different arena at that point because those are C-class neighborhoods, those are cheaper properties. So typically when you're hitting the 1% rule, like Graham said, everyone's still looking for the 1% rule and it's just not there much at all anymore. And in most cases, if it is there, I don't want to say there's a reason for it, but there's a reason for it. And Detroit, in my book, there's not really a reason for it. It's still really good neighborhoods, really good properties that in most other markets aren't going to hit the 1% rule. So to me, it's kind of an exception to what's available out there. With that said, one of the questions is, Al, this will be for you. What's the typical anticipated year-over-year growth in Detroit?
Yeah, we had a slide in that. I've been seeing about around 7% is what I've seen. And I've seen some years at 3%. And then, when you talk about high end, I've seen even north of that. Mm-hmm. Year in, year out, I'm typically seeing anywhere between, I'd say 3 to 7%, give or take. A couple of years ago, we were at 10%. But just to piggyback about what you said a second ago, one thing I wanted to chime in on, Ali, is people don't realize when it comes to real estate investing, one of the other major two components is property management and people you work with. I can't emphasize this enough. I say this on every single one of my calls. And guys like Graham, people like Ali, these are these are tough people to find to work with, guys. I can't say that enough because they're always going to be looking for your best interest. When I say about people to work with, anybody can sell a property. I could decide not to work with anyone and just say, hey, I'm going to list these properties on the MLS, right? But that's where the relationship ends. The relationship ends as soon as I make that sale on the MLS. That's not what I'm here for. As I said earlier about the onesie-twosie buyers, I'm here to build relationships, and I could say the same thing for Graham, and I can say the same thing for Ali. And as for management, you can have the best property in Beverly Hills, California, and have absolutely a new build, no issue, no property, set it and forget it type of property, but have piss poor management. What kind of results can you really expect from that kind of investment? You get in what you put in. And for me, that's not somewhere that I want to mess with or something I want to mess with. I want to make sure I'm working with the right team and having the right team work for me as well. So this has got to be a good marriage for both of us. And I can tell you that I want to hold up my end of the bargain for the type of property I'm going to offer and type of neighborhood that you're going to be buying in. Those are ones that I'm telling you, get on my back. I got it covered. Financing, Graham, I go to bat for him. Ali, when it comes to any sort of consulting, guys, I know what she says is not all financial advice or anything like that. The lady knows what she's talking about.
Oh, thanks.
Promise.
Most days. Yeah. We'll see. One of the questions, you hit some of the cap rates. What are the typical cap rates for the properties that you offer? Is there a standard range that they tend to fall in?
I use cash on cash, so I might not be the best person to ask that. You might be.
Cap rates are hard right now too because of interest rates. Like a cap rate almost means absolutely. Cap rates I feel like used to mean more. Like it was a more straightforward measurement, but with interest rates flying all over the place these days, it's gotten a little. I see very few people focusing on cap rate anymore.
If I use your numbers, I'd say 9%.
Okay.
8 to 9%.
And are prices ever negotiable?
Not really, just because there's so many factors that go into when we set prices, guys. It goes from renovations to overhead to profitability to anything that has occurred. Typically, when I put it under contract with you, I'm not, picking up the phone and saying, hey, I ran into this issue. I need to replace this wall. It's going to cost me an extra $2,500. I don't do that. Unless it's something really major that just kind of kills the deal. But yeah, these are usually non-negotiable type of numbers. If you're tight and you're close and you need to have a conversation with me, we can have a talk, but usually they're non-negotiable.
And I will say, just generally with turnkeys, I almost never see them as negotiable prices, because essentially they are already negotiated, like they're already down as far as they can be. There's not usually enough meat on the bone it's a different kind of world, which is people are used to being able to negotiate, but with turnkeys it's also, like in the last few years the negotiating power has been difficult because you have to overbid and there's multiple offers and whatever. So with turnkeys, typically when you see one listed, the price just is what it is, and if you want it, you can have it. End of story. Like, it saves a lot of conversations. So it's very standard. Al is no different than any other turnkey provider on this. I never see, unless something crazy happens, the only possibilities are if an appraisal comes in freakishly low. Sometimes negotiations will come in at that point as far as like, what do we do about it? All that. So there would have to be a very intentional reason for them to be negotiable. And that's true for all turnkeys.
One last thing, Allie, is do we offer a wait list or whatnot? Guys, we're first come, first serve. Very simple, very straightforward. You like a property, you're pre-approved with Graham already, you show me your paperwork, you can get it under contract immediately. And
with that said, if they don't have an available property right that second and you want one, I will start a wait list on my end. So that way Al can let me know, hey, we have one coming up, and I go down so I can actually manage a wait list. So, like if there's 5 properties available, they all get taken, you can move fast enough. Don't worry, you're not out of the running. I can work with you on that one.
We require a $5,000 EMD. That's all I just want to throw out there.
Earnest money, for anybody who doesn't know what EMD is. So when you put the property under contract, you'll put earnest money down. It's not a fee. It goes towards your closing, but it's to hold the property. So that's the EMD. Are there any seller credit incentives on closing costs to help with interest rates? And if Graham's open, I'll let Al answer that question. But also, I've had a lot of conversations with Graham about some lenders are encouraging people to do pay for points, essentially to buy your rate down. Graham has a different take on it, which if he wants to share that, or if you guys have any questions in this arena, now would be a good time.
You can go first, Graham. Go ahead.
Oh, my turn?
No pressure.
Oh, okay. So if I come on the tour, Allie, which I haven't said yes or no, but you were talking about all 3 of us are going to hold everybody's hand. Will you hold my hand if I come on the tour? I'm just curious. Okay. All right. Just checking. All right. Yeah, the rates are kind of crazy these days. And like I tell everybody, this is where I was telling Allie not too long ago, is that on a normal day, which we haven't seen in over a year, if you were to buy a rate down, typically 1 point would get you a 1/4 point reduction in rate. That on paper, it's a 5.11 year return. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. I like to keep my returns within 3 to 5 years. But in today's environment, because from one day to the next, Fannie and Freddie and Wall Street, they're trying to determine how to price these loans. The spread on a buy down is much greater to the advantage of the buyer. As an example, today, I had a 25% down transaction on a very similar sales price that you were talking about, the 125, and he could have gotten a 7% rate at 0 points. 1 point would have bought him down to 6.5. 2 points would have bought him down to 6.25. So you can do that, okay? But on the flip side of things, what we're offering, I don't think I mentioned this to you, Allie. If you want to pay those points, that's great. You'll buy the rate down, and it's going to get you a 2.9 3-year return to do just that. Or you can take the 0 point pricing. I'll give you a guarantee for 3 years. In the next 3 years, if and when our inflation hits the recession wall, which it will, we don't know when, 3rd, 4th quarter, but we have a 3-year guarantee that if you want to refinance the loan, just come back to me. I'll waive all the closing costs. So it's kind of yeah. So you could buy, do the 0 point today and come save your money and come buy it down tomorrow, or do it right now. But on these type of properties, 6.5 is still a pretty good rate. For that investment. It's still going to get you the cash flow you need.
Awesome.
And for any newer investors, or some people might have just heard all of that and they're like, huh, what did he just say? I'm going to give you a cliff notes of what Graham is talking about. So right now, if you go to get a mortgage, it's going to be some interest rate. Let's call it 7.5%. And you have the ability with lenders to buy points. And when you buy a point, for every point that you buy, which means it costs a certain amount of money out of your pocket, every point you buy, it will lower that rate. And so that's what we're saying, is that a lot of lenders are saying, and you can do it. You can say, yes, I want to buy 4 points, and it's going to bring the interest rate down, whatever it is, 1% or something. And you can do that. On the flip side, what Graham is talking about is, if you don't spend your money on the points right now, just get stuck with a higher rate, save your money. And when inevitably the rates do drop, you can then refinance your property into that lower rate. And a couple things is, number one, if you, let's say you were going to pay, I don't know, $2,400 towards buying your rate down now, instead of paying that money to buy your rate down now while it's higher, wait until the rate goes lower and then buy it down, because then you're buying it down for the same $2,400 from the lower rate, if that makes any sense. So you actually end up, that's when you get it cheaper versus buying it down now and spending your money to get it to what will probably still be higher than what it's going to drop to later. And then what Graham is offering, which is amazing, is at any point in the next 3 years, when those rates go down, let's say they're 7.5% now, a good number might be, say, 5.5%. Maybe they drop to 5.5%. And if that happens at some point in the next 3 years, you can go back to Graham and say, hey, I want that lower rate. And he's willing to waive the closing cost, because normally you would just pay the closing cost to redo that loan or refinance that loan. And so he's saying, we'll do it for you. So that is an incentive to, if whatever rate you get now, you don't really have to worry about it. You only want to do this on solid properties like Al's properties. Don't go buying the sketchiest property on the planet and then assume you're going to refinance it. Like, don't add risk layers here. But if you buy a really solid property, you don't have to worry as much about what the rate is now. So then later, if you refinance, your cash flow is going to get higher with a lower interest rate. Rents are going to be going up over time. And then that snowball of profit and cash flow is going to start to happen. So that's my Cliff Notes version for anyone who may have gotten lost in that first, lending can very quickly, you're like, like, okay, wait, we're talking math and big words and economy and recession all at the same time, and explosion. So one of the questions we just talked about with, it says, what are the rates, the required credit score and down payment about? I can answer the last part. Is for an investment property that you're not living in, minimum 20% down. When you put 25% down, Graham might be able to speak to that. You can typically get a slightly lower rate. And then, what are the rates today, Graham? And what is a typical required credit score?
Well, we can go down to 620. A lot of lenders will stop at 640, 680, but we actually will go down to 620
on the credit score.
If you go, on the credit score, yeah. So if you go down to 620, we can still do the loan, but then again, you're going to pay for it in the rate. Our highest threshold is 740, where you're going to get your optimum rates. Your optimum rates always are going to be on the 25 versus the 20, because the Fannie Mae adjustment on the 20% versus 25 is more than double. So you're talking a quarter to maybe 3/8 variance in rate from the 20 to 25, where like on the 25, like I mentioned earlier, is we can do today 7% at no points. I couldn't do that on the 20% because the adjustments are there. You would automatically have to pay a point to get to 7.25, or whatever the case may be. So it's always better to go 25% down. I did see another question in the box here about minimum loan amounts. We actually will go down to 50,000 on the loan amount. It's like those $80,000 properties; those are still very doable. A lot of lenders, yes, they do stop at around 75 or 100,000. Most of them around 100,000. They want to talk to you. If you wanted to go with the DSCR route, which is not the Fannie Freddie route, they do have a minimum threshold of 100. Just to answer that.
And I think you just hit this 20 versus 25% down, how it'll impact rates. I think is that do you lend to LLCs or no?
We can. That would be in the non-QM or the DSCR route.
Okay, so just to confirm, you can offer DSCR non-QM loans. Okay.
Yes.
Perfect.
We're about ready to launch, and I know, hold on your hats, about ready to launch an investor HELOC. And I can't wait. So that's going to be
even
great.
Al chimed up on them like, what?
Yeah. Every time I see it somebody, I'll go, oh my God, because it's virtually impossible to find. So we're about ready to launch it off on a private label. I'm hoping any day now. I'll let you know. I'll let Allie know. Let's put it that way.
Nice. And I'll let everyone know. I'm skipping a couple of questions I'm going to come back to. They're more about the properties. I'm trying to hit the financing questions right now. I'm an investor in stocks and cryptocurrency. Would I be able to qualify for a loan in regards to proof of income?
Is your income totally derived from your investments, or do you have a job? I mean, it's kind of a open-ended question there.
If you, Brian, if you want to email me, I'm going to put my email address in here again. If you want to email me, I will respond to you with Graham copied on it. So that way you guys can have a conversation and see what you might qualify for and or how.
On the conventional side, the Fannie Freddie side, even though he's got a lot of assets, if those assets are kicking off enough income to support it, the answer is yes. If not, then we'd probably have to go with the DSCR route.
Perfect.
Okay.
I think I may have gotten the lending one, so I'm going to go back a little bit. Seems like the homes are fairly old. Do you inspect or replace plumbing and electrical as well on a typical rehab?
Yeah, absolutely. That's part of the city inspection as well. Plumbing, electrical, that's all, included in our renovations. When we discuss, it's not only cosmetic, guys.
It's not lipstick on a pig.
No, it's not.
They're rebuilding the pig's organs, guys. Rearranging them.
Yeah, you have a physical inspector. You're going to have multiple sets of eyes, guys. So it's not just the inspector, but you're going to have our internal walkthrough. You're going to have the city inspector walking through the property. You're going to have an appraiser probably walking through a property. And then you're going to have your own third-party inspection. So you're going to almost have a handful of people walking through this property prior to you guys even take ownership. So there's going to be a lot of set of eyes, and typically that's more than enough. But for the part being to this question, absolutely. Plumbing, electrical, mechanicals, all that good stuff.
Yeah, and as far as the houses being pretty old, that's pretty typical for most markets that turnkeys are in. There are some new construction turnkeys or whatever you want to call them. I haven't seen newer homes like from the 90s or 2000s in turnkey world, honestly, since the crash. And the thing with the older homes is it really does come down to all those inspections. And in most cases, most turnkeys only get your third-party inspection, which things can get missed, whatever. But like Al is saying, these properties all get such a series of inspections. It's not just reliant on one inspection. So there's a really good chance that anything that is old or not working or not functioning, it's going to get caught at some point in that equation. And my experience with older properties, there are definitely older properties that are just not in great shape. It depends on the degree of the rehab the turnkey provider is doing, depends on the original bones of the houses. A lot of the houses that Al works with, if not the majority, are brick, for example. I'm such a fan of brick. And it is, when you sometimes get into older homes, the bones of that house can be, in my experience, so much better than newer bones. Like houses were just built better back then. So assuming that all the systems and all the everything is checked out and good and rehabbed and all of that, sometimes the older homes can actually be more sturdy and a little better. So it all comes down to that maintenance and all those inspections to tell you what the true condition of it is. Let's see, what do we have here? Here's a good one. What is a good percentage to use for what the property tax will be after the purchase?
I like to use the 2% rule. That is not in writing, guys, by any
Not
means.
to be confused with the 2% rule that's related to the 1% rule. We just got that out of everyone's lingo. This is a whole different 2% rule.
2% for property tax rule. So not by any means is that even accurate, but it's just giving you a rule of thumb of if you wanted to get a general estimate of what your taxes are going to be around. You can use the 2% rule, but Allie, I've already kind of given you some info about Michigan taxes. Mm-hmm. I'll replenish that if you don't have it. I'll
if you guys, Al's saying assume 2% of the purchase price, and then if you want a detailed I actually recorded a video when I was with Al. I hovered over him with my camera while he was on the computer, and he pulled up all sorts of different things and where he goes to look to get the taxes and how the taxes are going. So it's not a super long video, but it's pretty detailed. So if you guys want more information on how the taxes work around Detroit, shoot me an email and I will send you that link to that tax video. Here's a good one. Should we wait a few weeks to get pre-qualified if the Detroit trip is a target time to buy, since it's right around a month away?
That would be my question.
I assume so. I know my answer. We'll see if it matches Graham's. My answer is get pre-qualified now. Like I assume never wait on a pre-qualification, because when you get pre-qualified, you know what and if you qualify. You know, if you are assuming you qualify, but there's some problem or whatever, and then you go on this trip and then you can't buy the property. And, you know, I like to always, I think one of the biggest tools for investors is knowing what they can buy. And so I'll let Graham jump in, but I would say I'd never wait on pre-qualifications.
Well, like Al's company and all the rest of the turnkey providers around the country, they want to make sure that, you know, you're a viable candidate to buy the property. And the way to do that is providing a pre-approval agreement from a lender stating, yes, you can afford to buy this property. Okay. So, I mean, you could always go to Detroit, say, I like that property. And Al says, fine, you got the pre-approval, and you go, no, but I'm going to get one. Then the guy standing behind you, he's going to say, well, I'll take the property. I've got my pre-approval. Okay. So, I mean, those are really the realities of doing that. Now, as far as getting pre-approved, do we do a credit check? Of course. The credit check's good for 120 days. If you have a 740 credit score or higher, which is in the top echelon of credit scores, having a credit pull every 3 or 4 months, it's not even going to sneeze at your credit. But we only pull it once. You can buy 5 houses for mile. I'm still going to pull it once. And if you don't buy anything in 120 days, I will not pull it again until you come back to me after 120 and you provide me with a contract. I will have to pull it again. So, I mean, that's where a lot of people are a little nervous about, I don't want my credit pulled. Well, if you have a high credit profile, and I'm an investor myself, I just got through closing on 3 last week, and I'm constantly having my credit pulled, but for some crazy reason, it still manages to stay close to the 800 mark. So I think that's kind of my theory about credit. And I do have you know, Allie, you're welcome to share that link to my channel. I have a video.
I can do that right now.
Yeah, I have a video on credit you're welcome to listen to.
While we have you talking, one of the questions is, can I buy in my name and move it to an LLC? Would your company call the loan due, or is it a case-by-case basis?
Now, if I had $1 for every time I had this conversation, I'd have a lot of money. As a lender, as a loan officer, I would say you cannot do that. As an investor, which you get 2 hats when you work with me. One is a lender, one is an investor. 99% of my clientele will go through that same exercise every time, okay, because they want that asset protection. Now, what happens is when we fund the loan, we deliver it into the secondary market. Fannie Mae will buy it. They will turn around and they will bundle these things up and sell it off on Wall Street. The guys on Wall Street, they'll pick up these loans and they'll go through a due diligence period. They'll actually re-underwrite the loan to make sure we did our job right. Once they like it, they say, okay, we're going to buy this loan. So that time period is usually about 3 or 4 months. So once you close on the loan, we fund in your individual name. If you want to go ahead and, you know, get your LLC docs and your deed of trust, send it to an attorney or a escrow officer, say, I want this to retitle on my LLC. You're more than welcome to do that. As a loan officer, I can tell you can't. As an investor, it happens every day. The due on sale that you're referring to, I've been at this for 25 years. I have never seen a due on sale call. All they care about is getting their money. Okay. So just wait that 3 or 4 months, because the dust has to settle, and you don't want, because they're pulling reports. The guys on Wall Street that are buying these loans, they have their own reports. They're pulling a fraud guard, a mirrors report, not credit, but they're doing everything else to see if we did our job right. But when the dust settles, and you'll know it's settled because you're getting that invoice in the mail saying, okay, here's the servicer, here's your first payment, you're good to go.
I missed a question on here while we still have it, Graham. What's your experience with foreign investor finance? What are the docs needed? And I believe I need an LLC. Cannot invest as foreign corporation. And what's the interest rate? I would assume that goes over to the DSCR non-QM loan for foreigners.
The DSCR lending and non-QM is not sold out onto the to Fannie and Freddie, and those rates are typically higher. So if we're just talking 7 today, we're probably somewhere in the middle to upper 8s on the DSCR.
Perfect. I think Chet is that a hand up, Chet?
Why don't we do one more question where Chester can kind of tell us? Go ahead, Chester.
Chet, let me know if you do have a question. I can unmute you if you want me to. Let's see. I think you may have to unmute yourself. So unmute yourself if you have a question. And
his microphone doesn't work, so he's typing in the chat.
Oh, okay. No worries. Let's see. Back to Graham. Do you use specific credit bureau or take the middle score from the 3 majors?
We do take the middle score from the 3 majors. There's only like 4 or 5 different tri-pool companies out there. We go through partners on the majority of it. There's Credco that occasionally we'll use, but the data is all basically the same.
Perfect. And as we're starting to wrap up, anyone with any last questions, now is your time. I think we're getting to the end. We'll see if Chet's got a question. Anybody else? And if you want to share, I would imagine a lot of people getting on here have had perceptions or are curious about Detroit, how you guys feel about it. Is it similar to what you had in your head, not in your head at all? Are you guys interested in the trip? I think we've gone long enough now. We've whittled down to a smaller group. And if you guys want to unmute yourself, happy, we can all have an open chat. It is free game from here. Ooh, is that an unmute from Chris?
Yeah, I remember the same exact stuff that you were talking about in terms of hearing about Detroit. I even remember back around when the market crashed, and it was like you could literally go buy a house on eBay for $1,000, and it was just one of those.
Oh, I forgot properties were being sold on eBay.
Do you remember that?
So
yeah, it's crazy. But it's good to hear, especially after your trip. I had read a lot that about how it's been on this major upswing. So then hearing from you firsthand to confirm that, after I've been following you for a couple of years. So that was definitely hearing that. And then, now I'm definitely going on the trip. So
yay.
Yeah, about it.
Can't wait.
Awesome. Well, definitely shoot me an email. Yeah. Anyone interested in the trip, make sure you send me an email today or tomorrow or whenever, and just let me know, and we'll make sure you get all set up.
Yeah.
Well,
I already got
if you go on the trip, Al's going to have to take you to our favorite Philly cheesesteak place. You may have to eat on the hood of your car, or he can just, or he can just bring his smoker over to the office and throw some meat on there for you.
Hey, you said it, so I'm in, man. That's it. That's enough for me.
Graham, that means you're going because you have to help him operate the smoker.
I may just come up for
smoker duty on the Al.
Just for the Philly cheesesteak. I may show up.
Wait, is that the place? Is that the same place I went to, or is it different?
Probably.
Probably the food truck looking thing. Man, that was good.
We got to do it. We got to do it. Maybe we'll plan something depending on how. Let's get a head count first, and then we'll definitely, guys. Detroit is a foodie town. You're going to be missing out just on the food if you don't come for this trip.
Yeah, well, like our priority for this trip is investing, obviously, but we're not going to short you of the actual Detroit experience of you can't go to Detroit and not eat the good food of Detroit.
Awesome.
M, is that an unmute? Nope. Calvin, you're going to be on the trip? Where'd Calvin's box moved? Oh, I think he actually jumped off. Oh, I think Chet may have gotten back on with something else.
I told him the messages question.
I'm just struggling. Chet, I'm struggling every day these days. No worries.
That's fine. He says
he's going to ask Graham on the trip, which means Graham's going to have to come on the trip. So.
All right. So I get to hold hands with Allie and I get a Philly cheesesteak. I'm in.
There you go.
And just one last thing, guys. I'm going to have a property manager there also. I already confirmed it. There will be for like a 30 to 60 minute window where we'll do some Q&As with the PM. And I've already confirmed that we will have somebody from the title company too. So you'll have title you'll have property management, and you'll have a lender. So we'll have all the boxes checked for you guys, especially for your first time investors. This will be a great learning curve for you guys.
Yep. And we really didn't hit much on property management in this video. If you guys have questions about that, shoot me an email. I can even put Al on it. They are currently using a third-party property manager. They went the in-house route. One of many more things that I try and shout from the rooftop is a lot of people want in-house property management. And I'm here to tell you, in my experience, it's very few companies who pull that off well. It's just not, I don't advocate for it like a lot of people do. And the property manager that Al is working with is a prime example of why third party can be so fantastic, because they're really good at what they do. And Al was kind of talking about this before, where they haven't had any evictions since they started with this manager, and they've just had a really good experience. So you'll get to meet one person from the management company, or so whatever management questions you guys have, shoot them to me in an email, because we didn't hit on that in this. And if anybody is watching this video, the recording of it, so you're not seeing all these links in the chat. So some of the links were, I've got Graham's link. I can connect you with him. We put the property tour video of that Mansfield property that's available. And then we showed, we've got the link for the Appoline property. And then, so if you're watching this and you haven't seen my email address in the chat, it's Ali, A-L-I, @hipsterinvestments.com. So shoot over whatever questions. I can send you whatever links, anything you want. Just email me after you watch this and we can touch base. So on that note, does anybody have anything else before we call it done? How do we do on time? Hey, we actually are right at the 2-hour mark, which honestly for these things is pretty good. Like I've been on some that everyone gets to talking and it's like 3 hours in. So I think we did pretty good.
Great. Well, I appreciate everybody joining. For those of you that stuck around, thank you so much. And I'm hoping to see you guys and meet you guys in person. And I look forward to working with every single one of you. I'm sure I could say the same for Graham and Ali too.
Yeah, and thank all of you. And I meant to say this earlier too, but a lot of you are on here and I haven't seen your names before. Thank you so much for jumping on. If I can ever be of help for you, for whether it's buying turnkeys, real estate, I do coaching in general, whatever I can help, but I'm so appreciative to see so many names that I've not seen before. So I really appreciate you guys trusting me and hopping on, and I mean, hanging out with us for all the way through the 2-hour mark. You're very welcome to everyone in the chat. Thank you again. Some of your names I haven't seen, and I'm so excited to meet you. So please reach out, say hi. I love to say hi back. And yeah, if you go to bed tonight and you wake up at 3 a.m. with some burning Detroit question that you're like, oh, why did I not ask that?
Shoot it away.
Shoot me an email and we'll get Al involved. If it's a question for Graham, happy to share everyone's information. So I think with that, I think we're good.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it once again.
Thank you, everybody.